In 1963, Madame Nhu, the First Lady of South Vietnam, made world headlines for what were deemed to be her crass and heartless remarks over a series of Buddhist protests in South Vietnam, in which a number of Buddhists had been covered in petrol and set alight by their own people in defiance of the rule of President Diem, the brother-in-law of Madame Nhu. It was seen as one more piece of evidence that confirmed the tyrannical rule of President Diem, in which religious persecution against Buddhists was rife. Here is a segment of the interview as it unfolded.
What have the Buddhist leaders done comparatively? The only thing they have done, they have barbecued one of their monks, whom they have intoxicated, whom they have abused the confidence. And even that barbecuing was done not even with self-sufficient means, because they used imported gasoline.
Faced with such evidence, the anti-Diem reporting of journalists such as the young 28-year-old David Halberstam of the liberal-leaning New York Times and Neil Sheehan, Saigon bureau chief of United Press International, among other journalists, the narrative of religious persecution and repression of the Buddhists received worldwide attention and has since become the orthodox narrative of events as they unfolded. What has been lost to history is the powerful investigative journalism of the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Marguerite Higgins, who thoroughly and convincingly exposed this view as factually incorrect. Her best and most detailed refutation of the Halberstam-Sheehan thesis is to be found in her groundbreaking 1965 classic, Our Vietnam Nightmare. Unfortunately, shortly after publication, Marguerite Higgins died of a rare tropical disease at the age of 45 on January 3, 1966. Higgins had risen to prominence in the later days of World War II, when she was embedded with US troops as they marched across France and into Germany. She again came to prominence for her coverage of the Korean War, and was one of the few journalists respected by Douglas MacArthur, who allowed her to go where she wished and to report as she pleased. In 1965 she was the agent correspondent for the New York Herald Tribune. Not only was she a most astute journalist, she was one of the few journalists to actually interview Madame Nhu and had an insight into her thinking. She also gained an exclusive interview with Tich Tri Quang, the leader of the Buddhist insurrection. This she gained under his mistaken belief that in having White House accreditation, Marguerite Higgins had a special direct line to influence President Kennedy, and thereby his policy on South Vietnam. Our Vietnam Nightmare is a detailed expose on how two radicals, Tich Tri Quang and his media frontman Thich Duc Nhiep, cleverly manipulated both the foreign media and ordinary Buddhists in order to bring down the Diem regime. In her chapter, Machiavelli With Incense, Marguerite Higgins provides a detailed expose on Tich Tri Quang, his methods, motives and general character. Whether he was simply a power-hungry cleric seeking to topple the Diem regime and establish a Buddhist bloc in South Vietnam, or was actively working for the North Vietnamese Communists, she leaves undecided. She does point out that he had a long history of links to the Communists, that his own brother was working for the North and an active leader in subversion. Most telling were claims that documents captured by the South Vietnamese detailed that he was in fact a communist agent. Higgins cites a staff member of the Saigon Post who reported the following conversation with Tich Tri Quang. With the Americans it is not so interesting anymore. Some of them persist in thinking that they can reform me into agreeing with them. It is useful to smile sometimes and let them think so. We will use the Americans to get rid of the Americans. Higgins concludes, based on her own interview, the following. As I emerged from the Tsar Loy Pagoda, it was clear to me that Tich Tri Quang was hungry for power, exhilarated by the world's attention and supremely confident of getting his way. She relates that he tried to blackmail President Kennedy into opposing Diem by promising dozens more burning Buddhist monks if he did not get what he wanted. She also relates Tich Tri Quang's callous disregard for those Buddhists being set up to be victims in the future. She even says of Tich Tri Quang, "But if I repeat some of those things you are telling me, it could hurt you." To this Tich Tri Quang replied, "That is not possible, because nobody will believe you." Higgins points out that far from representing the Buddhists of South Vietnam, Tich Tri Quang represented but 1/14 of the factions, and then didn't even have full control of this faction, most significantly in the provinces and regional areas where the Buddhist leadership under Tich Tri Quang used coercion to force compliance with his political agenda. Marguerite Higgins debunks the notion that between 87 and 90% of South Vietnamese were Buddhist too. This myth has continued for 50 years. She points out that according to the Defense Department Pocket Guide to Vietnam, of the 14 million people in South Vietnam in 1963, the general breakdown of the population was as follows. 1.5 million Catholics, 500,000 other Christians, 1 million animists, 1.5 million Cao Dai, 1 million Hao Ho, 4 million Confucians, 500,000 Taoists, 500,000 Hindus and Muslims, and 3.5 million Buddhists of all sects and followings. Of course, these categories are blurred as many people incorporated aspects of a number of these particular religious groups in their beliefs. She points out that a United Nations report on religious persecution tabled shortly after the assassination of President Diem concluded that there was no appreciable religious persecution by the Diem regime in South Vietnam. This too has been forgotten by historians. Diem was a Catholic, but in the Mandarin tradition. His sister-in-law, the First Lady, Madame Nhu, was a Buddhist till she was 18. Then she became a Catholic. Although she emphasised to Marguerite Higgins that she continued to hold Buddhist philosophy in deep esteem. Her father was a Confucian, and her mother remained a Buddhist all her life. Although there were more Catholics as provincial chiefs than Buddhists at this time, this was often because they were the only ones who were educated enough to take on these positions, given the prevailing French-oriented system of education. However, only 3 of the 14 generals were Catholics, and most of the cabinet were Buddhist. David Halberstam popularised the image of Madame Nhu as the Dragon Lady, a femme fatale and Machiavellian intriguer. Marguerite Higgins paints a very different picture, that of a Catholic feminist set upon working towards the emancipation of women and the Vietnamese people in general, a Vietnamese Joan of Arc. Higgins quotes her as follows, "I am committed to the struggle to wrest decent treatment of women from the reluctant, devious and often hypocritical men of Vietnam, in which women are reduced to being an eternal mirror, an unpaid servant, a doll without a soul." Madame Nhu introduced bans on prostitution, contraceptives, abortion, organised animal fights and taxi dancing. "I'm no fanatic," she said. "I like to dance. The family law that I originally introduced was aimed only at abolishing taxi girls. The men, that is the men of the committee, amended it to apply the dancing ban to everybody, as they are very jealous and they do not like to see Vietnamese women dancing with American men." On the night of the 21st of August 1963, Madame Nhu's husband, David Nhu, President Diem's brother, head of the secret police among other things, was pressed upon by a group of senior generals to raid the headquarters of Tich Tri Quang and his movement at the Za Loi Pagoda in order to bring to an end Tich Tri Quang's pseudo-Buddhist subversion aimed at removing President Diem from power. This was the chief aim of the North Vietnamese Communist Party at this time. However, this is not how journalists like David Halberstam and Neil Sheen painted events. In the age of civil rights demonstrations, sit-ins and passive resistance, these journalists viewed the raid through the lens of draconian power set against innocent citizens fighting for their civil rights. This was far from the reality of the situation, as Marguerite Higgins amply demonstrates in various chapters in her book. Indeed, as Marguerite Higgins amply proves in her Our Vietnam Nightmare, Tich Tri Quang was a master of subversion and an early exponent of rent-a-crowd. He was not a true Buddhist, but a political revolutionary exploiting cultural differences to bring down a government and promote revolution. Madame Nhu knew this and tried to warn the West through her barbecue monk speech. She wanted to tell the West what was really going on. However, few journalists had the sagacity and insight of Marguerite Higgins to discern truth from fiction, and appearance from substance. Our understanding of the Vietnam War may well have been quite different if the veteran journalist and first female Pulitzer Prize winner for foreign correspondence had lived to continue to write beyond January 3, 1966.